Today, we're joined in studio by Johnny Davis, the owner and creative director of Johnny Davis Digital Solutions. We have spoken to Johnny once before. What we titled Episode 1, The Origin Story. You can find that and all other podcast episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and follow us on Instagram at jdavisdigital. So what I'd like to do, and I think that this is a good idea, so we're kind of starting this season with a conversation with you, sort of touching base, where you were the last year when you were first on our podcast, where we first started this. And so I think what I'd like to do going forward is every time we begin a new season of this podcast, to go ahead and sort of touch base with you, kind of see what's changed, what's happened, where we are as a company, where you are, as a creative. Today, what I would like to really talk about and kind of hone in on, not too long ago, you and I were having a pretty good conversation about coming off of the most recent market and how you want to sort of realign your company to sort of where you started it. And you've had a series of really motivating, really inspiring conversations with us in the studio. And so I kind of want to take this opportunity to sort of put you on a public soapbox, so to speak, and kind of, for those that don't know our company or don't know about us, what do you represent? Like, what do you stand for as a company? What's your mission? What's important to you?
Well, I mean, when we first started the company, for me, it was about collaboration and trying to get, a good group of people that we work with, that we work for, and, bring everybody together and, really go down the road together. And then as the company's grown, it's been a big transition with the video, and we're doing a lot more photography, a lot more video, a lot more retouching, and we've got amazing people, in-house and on location, and everybody's doing a great job. But I feel like we're stretched so thin as creatives. You want to dedicate the time to everything you're doing and do a good job, but it seems like currently, I'm demanding a lot from everybody to, cover this and do this. And so, and of myself, and you always feel like you're maybe coming up short, or you could do a better job if you have more time, but we just don't have the time. So you reflect on things as far as where you're at, where you want to be. And, I've said this to you guys. I feel like, there's a saying, you have to slow down to speed up.
Right.
And I feel like that's where I've kind of come to the realization this spring, going through market. It was a successful market. You guys all did an amazing job. I couldn't be happier with it. But I look at the strain we've put on ourselves to get things done, and, it feels like it could be so much better. And, part of it for me is getting out of my own way, to figure out how to make that better. And I think, we definitely need a production manager and to replace myself. My dad, he used to tell me all the time that I need to fire myself and get somebody else in that position. And I was like, kind of dismissed her. I didn't know, thought it was kind of crazy, but he's right.
Right.
I need somebody else to handle the day-to-day that we can trust, to get along with everybody, that brings a lot to the table, because, it's with everything you have a good core group.
Right.
And it's hard to bring somebody else into that core group to kind of run those people,
Right.
and not that you need micromanaging, but, scheduling and making sure jobs get out, our deadlines are met, those are all things that I do outside of, the production stuff of it. So, just somebody to manage it overall,
Right.
To take that off of myself, but then to help everybody here run more efficiently. And it's crazy how your company evolves and you see things as you're going. You want to make changes, but it's hard to make those changes on the fly,
Right. And you don't really have a down period
Right.
to be able to implement
Right.
those changes.
Well, and that's what we've all been talking about lately. Years ago, we would be busy from, market to market, and then we'd have summers and winters that, we would do research or try to figure out this or that, or, put together kits that, that way when we got on site, everything was ready. But now, we're starting to flatten that curve, as you called it years
Right.
ago, to where we're busy all year,
Yeah.
which is great. But in doing that, we've put a lot more on
Right.
everybody in general, to handle the load. And everybody's done an amazing job. And this isn't about, we need to do XYZ to make it better. It is about figuring out how we streamline it so that we can get back to where I wanted us to be.
I like that.
Yeah, and I want it to be more of the personal relationship with customers, and
That's
that's
what I
what.
was hoping you talk
Yeah,
about is why this is important from not an interoperational standpoint, but from the public facing, from our client's perspective. Why is this an important shift that you're implementing now?
well, it's like what we talk about. We've all talked about internally is being able to get to know our customers on more of a personal level versus let's just go in and shoot silos for you because you got to get this done for market.
Right.
You know, that's where we've done really well, and I think that's what separates us from a lot of companies is the personal relationship we have with our customers. And I feel like even though we're in front of our customers a lot doing their work, we've lost. I have, not that we as a company, but I feel like I've lost more of that personal touch to be like, I used to show up on site, even if I wasn't scheduled somewhere, but if we were working with them, I'd show up on site at customers and we'd all go to lunch and sit down and just, bullshit in general about stuff. And that's harder and harder for me to do just because I'm pulled in so many different directions. And this company has so many great things to offer, with the people we have in place, and but we're just, getting by day to day. And there's so many creative projects I want to do personally. And if I can get some of this load off of me that we can do these things, and then, again, it is a whole different face of the company people haven't seen. And that's where, I want it to be more of that instead of just, well, I got this job and I'm gonna call you to come do that job. But
And I think that there's a lot of companies, even creative agencies, that they do put sort of a transactional relationship on things. You pay me and I create.
right,
And I think that, what has attracted, I would say, every person who works for you is the idea that, there's a relationship that creates the revenue, the
right,
relationship over revenue. Because if you design your clients, if you create those relationships and you truly understand what your client needs at that season of their company, not a year down the road, but what they need right now, where they're going, you understand their design, it allows you to kind of be much more it allows you to tailor your approach to what they need at that time,
right,
instead of just like you were saying, well, what do you need? Okay, here's some silos, and then they, cut a check, and then you're done until the next time they need you.
right.
You
And
don't have any relationship there.
right, and I don't want that. We've done that a lot the past couple years, because we have grown so much, and just the day-to-day operations, we're doing these things to, make bills and to do this and to do that. And then you look back at it and, you realize that there's a disconnect in where I wanted to be and where we are.
Right.
And so that's why this last spring, and I mean, you guys know internally, and um, we've had meetings and one-on-ones and stuff like that. And I'm gonna continue to do that with, the guys that are in the field that I haven't got to yet. And
Right.
so I think it's important because as a company, I want us to be, like we have been in the past, more of a family, where we look out for each other and we're there for each other. Well, I mean, not all families, but a lot of families, so that's, I want it to be more tight knit.
Well, and I think that, early years ago when I first started working for you, I was always impressed with the fact that all of the family that you had brought together at that point, they were able to bring the best parts of themselves to the company, but kind of leave all of the baggage. They were able to, kind of, bring their A game, and then everyone else brings their A game. And I think that that does build a very dynamic team. It's
Oh
a team
yeah,
that's
for
out there
sure.
for, the long run, but it's also out there for the best of reasons.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about sort of in terms of projects that we do have, coming up, or maybe a little bit about the studio, that we're creating? Can you talk a little bit about the approach to those, the process of that, and then sort of the direction that you kind of that you see this kind of new direction of your company. Where's that going to take us?
Well, so we've got access to a space on Green Street, and we're real excited about that. We started that last year, and we ran into some hiccups and stuff, but we're back in there now, and we've had a great opportunity, like I say, with the customer base we've had to build these relationships to where we've actually built things in their showrooms, because when we have problems with our studio, we were able to do that, and it gave us a whole different dynamic as far as what we could offer, across the board. And now that we're back in the studio, it's amazing the interest that has has come up since spring market. We've got several different jobs that we're building sets for now, and for me, it is working with the customers, figuring out what their needs are, but then us being able to use those down the road for other customers. So a lot of what we're doing is more modular, that we can switch it up and use it for different customers down the road. But I think it's going to give us a lot of flexibility. It's another tool in your tool belt, basically, and it's a big one. That we can bring in customers and show them something totally different and tailor their experience. And then, like I say, we've built some stuff for one customer, some windows and some other things that were pretty unique, and then we use them on another set for different parts. And so it gives us a lot of versatility and gives our customers a whole new feel for their end product, versus it just being, well, this is how things are, and this is what you're stuck with, and this is what we offer. And but again, that's what we want to do across the board, is to offer like a whole experience.
See, I like that. That's what I
Yeah.
was hoping you talk a little bit about, like from the set construction to the final product. Everything is custom spec to the customer based on where the customer needs us to be and where they need their visuals to be.
Right.
And I think that that is a very, very individual approach, to you are almost balancing the creativity and the production, side of it. And so I think that that does give this very unique, the work that we've produced in that studio recently. There's nothing like it out there. I mean, it looks absolutely gorgeous. The idea of being able to bring, a southern plantation home or a villa in France to High Point to allow our customers, whether they're furniture manufacturers, interior designers, it really allows them to sort of build a world of their own that they can walk and work and, visualize.
Yeah, and I mean that, and it's exciting to see it. See it from concept to creation, and then see it captured. And we did a project for a customer that they had worked with an agency out of South Carolina, and they brought a video team up, and then we collaborated with them to help build this set so they could do their video aspects, and we did the photography aspects, and that was a lot of fun. So it is about across the board, getting to know your clients on more than just surface level, and figuring out how far we can take you down the road on things, and then building relationships off of that for the next one. It's just like our customer we have, Asian Loft.
Right.
They do have amazing, all kinds of antiques, artifacts.
Very highly
Yeah,
curated
is
collection. Yeah.
beautiful stuff.
International collection for
Yeah,
sure.
and a lot of accessories and stuff. And so I've started talking with some of our other customers that need this kind of service.
Yeah.
And there's several that are interested. And like I say, it's bridging the gap between different companies, and us being a part of that is a natural conversation. And that's where I want us to be, is in all these conversations about, well, we work with these guys, and they helped us get to here. Even if it's not a service we provide, it's connections, it's relationships, it's getting people further down the road. And if they're growing, we're growing. And that's what I want us to get back to, versus it just being, well, let's take that job because we can bill it for this, or let's do this because we can bill that for that. I know you got to pay your bills. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business, but we can be a lot more intentional about our business. I mean, we've said that a lot lately, and have a true direction as far as we're going, because I feel like we have been kind of like all over the place, grabbing at different things, seeing what'll work. And I think you got to do that, you
Yeah.
know. But then you start to draw back and or take a step back and you look at it all and you're like, all right, well, this isn't really what I want us to represent, or this isn't working so much, and this is causing, this or that. So let's fine tune things.
I think that's a great, and I think it's great that you're able to step back far enough to be able to see that. I think the direction you've always given has been always, very much from the front lines, and I think that it is important. I think it's very healthy, to be able to step back and say, well, let's assess, let's reassess. I think that as we're talking about fine tuning those things, and I know that we like to stay away from certain buzzwords in the studio because they do become such a kind of cliche part of our vocabulary, but I do like the fact that even before it really was a buzzword, that we were talking about an intentional growth, not the explosion, intentional growth,
Right.
intentional development, providing authenticity. And I think that it's very important that now you're able to step back just far enough to say, am I authentically representing my name because it's my name on the door? So talk to the viewer a little bit about where that authenticity comes from. Like, what do you want your company to represent this year, 5 years from now, 50 years from now?
Well, I mean, truly, again, I want it to represent the relationships we build. I want people to know that, when they work with us, we stand behind our product, from the beginning to the end. And um, we follow through with things, and we're there for the customer versus just for a paycheck, and that's really important that, people see that versus, I can tell you that all day, but the proof's in the pudding, so they say. At the end of the day, you're going to get what you get out of it, and I want people to feel good about that. And it's it is taking a step back from things and realizing, all right, well, I can do this and this really well and be good at that, or I can do 10 more things and keep just trying to juggle it. And it's not, well, it's not fair to your customer, it's not fair to us as a team. It's not fair to me expect that of you guys. It is reorganizing and restructuring and being better at what we what we are good at, and that is, you know, building those relationships, doing a good job, standing behind your end product, and delivering a good product.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, that's kind of where we're kind of taking a step back to those things.
I like that. Quickly, not to deviate too far, but talk to us about why you're excited. We're doing kind of organically. We've picked up a lot more work with interior designers. Where it's a related industry to the one that we're most familiar with, in the furniture industry. Talk to us a little bit about, when we're talking about authentic growth and organic growth, why the stories that we're telling, and why stories specifically that we're telling for these interior designers with their brand stories or their projects, why that's important, and why you have decided to kind of really kind of focus in on, those relationships, that's,
Well, yeah, and it is about, well, so the interior designers, they're working with different homeowners or companies or whatever that, it might be a smaller guy that's putting something together, and he came from, you know, somewhere over here, didn't have much to start with, but, you know, scraped his way to where they're at, and now he's building something. And so then the interior designer is telling the story of who this person is. Or, interior designers, themselves, they're always telling stories about, where they're at and where they're going, and where they came from. And it for us, or for me, seeing and meeting these people, it is interesting to hear their journey. And that's where the podcast has been a passion project, one of many that we finally got it kind of going. But, you know, it is about telling stories. It's about getting people to understand where, Ken Lewis came from, or Johnny Davis came from, or, Logan Floyd, or whoever that we're working with, or we're involved with, because at the end of the day, if you understand somebody's struggles or understand somebody's dreams, there is a connection, where if you don't understand those things and you don't know where they're coming from, it is more of a business transaction. And again, the podcast for us is a way to make that connection. The designers that we work for and with, it is nice because they bring a whole different dynamic to what we're doing. Being able to tell their story, being able to tell the story of what they're creating, why they source this product from this country versus this one, what happened there. So within every project, there's so many different dynamics that are brought to light, and people should know about them because that's what tells a story. That's what gets people involved. It's like when you watch a movie, if you just watch it for the main character, you lose a lot. There's a
Absolutely.
lot of supporting characters there that build that.
Absolutely.
And if you don't take the time to know those characters and get involved with them, at the end of it, you've missed a lot of the movie.
You're absolutely right.
And I feel like the people that we work with in general, designers, manufacturers, the people that designers hire, they all have stories, and that's what we're here to tell, overall. And to get back to your question, I guess, for us, it is more of, what you've helped us tremendously with is the creative storytelling of what we can do, because I think that's what people are interested in.
I agree.
They want a connection.
They
People
do.
are on the internet all the time scrolling for this or that, wanting some kind of connection.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're providing with
And
this.
unfortunately, I think a lot of social media that we see and that we're kind of inundated with is very surface level.
Yeah,
It
it
is
is.
it's a highlight reel,
Right.
honestly, for your own life, whether it's an influencer or anybody else. So to be able to know and understand, when we're on set, when we're in showrooms, when we're, having conversations with people, we're behind the camera, they're standing off to the side, and they allow such a intimate view into themselves as they're talking to you.
Right.
And while we're doing that, you can't help but think, boy, I would love other people to hear this story.
To know who they are.
Absolutely. And I think that, social media is good at showing, the highlights. It's like if you pull out family snapshots back in the 90s.
Right.
You never get the nitty-gritty. You never get those the failures. You never
Right.
get the self-doubt. So when we do these podcasts, when we do the stories, when we invite people on here, we do want to be intentional. We do want to be authentic, not just to our own story and the story of what inspires us, what motivates us, what drives us, what makes us get up in the morning. And, everybody who comes into the studio comes in with this very optimistic, this the true desire to exceed the expectations of themselves, their team, you, and our clients. And I think that that's important because I think that that comes back to us when you can meet someone on that level. You are inviting them, to open up also.
Right.
And,
Yeah. You're basically, this is who we are,
absolutely.
and that takes a lot,
It does.
but I think that's where you start to break down the barriers,
Absolutely.
and people, they realize, well, we're not judging you for this or that, because I mean, we've had issues with this,
Right.
it's learning each other. And that's what, I'm excited about what we're doing, with the podcast, with the designers, because it is opening up a lot of different things I've not really looked at versus it just being, so for in the past, we've been, and we still are very production oriented. I mean, I come from a pre-press background, so everything's production, 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 and we still have that, and it's a necessary evil. I mean, we're good at it, we're really good at it, but it's not everything about who we are, and I think that's what people need to start seeing more of, is that, we have a lot more to offer as a company, instead of XYZ. There's a whole nother dynamic there that we haven't really started unraveling until, recently. So it's fun to see it all take shape and see the people we have in place that are operational in this, and making it happen.
Yeah.
And me being a part of it, I feel blessed just to be a part of what you guys are doing.
Well, and I think it's exciting to see you step back because I think that you are so in the trenches, and historically you have been so in the trenches, especially when we are busy, you are busiest. Like when we're in market time, that is when we don't see you and we start to see you kind of become a living zombie a little bit
Just running into
in and out of
walls
the
and
studio.
yeah.
So I do like the idea. I know this past market you were able to take a dinner or two with clients and understand them on their level and learn more about their story. And I know that that inspires and motivates you. And a large portion of this podcast that we invite people on is to learn their story, and to motivate others, and to motivate future generations. The people
Yeah.
that are sitting down behind desks, and whether they are contemporaries of us in age or not, or whether they are just getting out of high school and trying to think about what they're doing. I did want to talk a little bit or ask you a little bit. This is the first, I guess, year that we're looking back on it now that we've invited interns from local colleges and universities. Talk to us about how important that is to pull people in that are just getting their feet wet into this, and having meaningful relationships and conversations with not just the institution that they're attending, but with them as a creative, as a creator, or as a production artist.
Well, I think it's really important, and we've had some really talented interns that come through, and I feel like they've contributed to what we've done. I personally haven't been able to be as involved as I'd like to be, but you guys have been really involved with them, and I've seen their work, and I've worked with them on set and location and stuff, and they've done amazing work. And I think they'll go on to do great things. And I think as a company we need to give back. Because we were given great opportunities by somebody,
Right.
and I hope that we can do that as a company to others as they're coming up through the field, and learn something from them, or they learn something from us, we learn something from them. Everybody, it's a good give and take. So I think it's been a great experience. Again, for me, I would like to be a lot more involved in it, being having the schedule to do that, but I know that they were very involved with some of the video shoots and some design stuff that we have done,
Yeah.
and they're really good. I say kids, they're not kids, but they're really
No.
good kids. I mean,
Yeah.
they did a great job, and like I say, I like to continue that, and being able to take a step back more, like we were talking about. I think we can even add more value to those kinds of things. Going forward, that's what I'm hoping anyway.
Right. And continuing to build the relationships with even not just the institution that is educating them and training them up, but crossing paths with them later on in their careers even.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It is interesting the legacy that you are building with this company without setting out to do so. I think that's very impressive.
Well, I think it's not me, and it's everybody that's involved with the company that is doing it. And again, that's where I want it to be a representation, of everyone, because I can only do so much,
Right.
and you guys have stepped up in numerous occasions, and taking care of things that I couldn't get to, and carried the ball and done amazing projects. And across the board, I think I want people you know to be able to look at this company overall, and feel like it was a great experience. And it's great knowing everyone individually, throughout the company, and being able
Right.
to work with them, and that's what is exciting to be a part of.
Yeah. So while we're talking about different parts of the team, it hasn't been that long ago. It feels like it's been 6 months, but three, I guess 3 years ago, you started doing video. You had the desire, you saw the need, in the market to offer video and cinematography services. You don't get the benefit of being there on most shoots because you are very busy. You're very tasked out with so many other things, but you do get to see the end result. And how have you seen the video services that your team is uh, providing, and how have you seen that process kind of change and evolve? And what are you excited about as we're going into projects yet in 2025 and beyond?
Well, yeah, it's amazing how the video has changed, from where we started to where we're at now. And I mean, everybody involved with that, Daniel, Claire, Logan, yourself, everybody that's had their hands in that pot has done an amazing job. And it, it's it is crazy to see the transition, because the first video job we did, I was there when you were there with me, and
Yeah.
I told the gentleman not to pay us for it because it was so bad. But that was because I did that. But now it has really gotten good, and I mean it is amazing the transition and everything. The amount of learning that's gone into it, and technology and equipment, and it is fun to watch it all. And I think truly, I think it's just going to continue to evolve, better and better. And that's what we're talking about currently is, kind of getting a list or a Rolodex together of people we can kind of call in to help on these bigger projects, because, we are a small team, so we're tasked with a lot. Each individual has to wear multiple hats. So I think if we can get a few more people involved that we can call in, I think it's going to ease, a lot of the load on what we have, and we're going to create an even better project,
Right.
and we're looking at putting procedures in place to streamline things, make things make a little bit better sense here and there. And I think that's going to help. So
For
again,
sure.
it's refining it as we go. We're definitely learning as we go. But it's becoming a very pivotal role in what we're doing, and I think it's just going to continue to grow into that.
So, and where do you see video in terms of like the broader scope of the direction of your company? Where we are creative storytellers. We are telling the stories that maybe get less attention. But are just as deserving of anybody else on a more international or larger stage. So, where is video important to you when it comes to telling those stories?
Well, originally it was, I mean, truly it was just based off of assembly videos is what
Yeah.
we were doing. But now, I mean, you guys have done stuff for Madison, you've done stuff for Rockingham County, we've done some major production videos, that are amazing. And I think that's the direction that we're going with everything. I think there's still going to have a place for, like our beauty shots of furniture here and there or whatever, because it's pretty. Was that you have a system in place, and we kind of run through that, and it helps to pay the bills for
Yeah.
sure, like silo
It's
work,
a little more formulaic.
right?
Yeah.
Formulaic, yeah. But you guys are very creative, and we've done some really cool stuff way outside of my scope of anything. And you see these things happening, and it's like, why not continue to, you know, go after these
Right.
kind of projects, and creating our own internal projects. We've talked about that kind of thing, and Daniel was talking about doing some stuff, and Logan and Claire both. And so it's fun to see the excitement there, and everybody individually wants to pursue this. So it is nice to see it evolve into something more than what I had imagined, because for me, it was an added service for existing furniture clients, and it was just something else we could add on to a photography shoot. But now it's evolved to, its own production. And it's, again, because of the people in place, and you guys doing a great job, and looking at it outside of, what if we did this, it would make it better. And what if we
Right.
did this, it would make it better. And it's always about making it better. And that's what's fun to see.
I like that aspect of it too, because I see that on, the team level on a daily basis, that as you're doing one project, you're thinking, well, if we did this, we could do this.
Yeah.
And what could we do? Like
Right.
what, we really don't have any, limitations, in terms of the scale of production we're doing. I think that we're limited only by our own ability and imagination.
Right. And I mean, equipment or personnel you can rent or you can hire,
Yep.
but what we're producing truly is really good. I mean, it's on another level, and we're very much infants in this, infancy stage in the company.
Absolutely.
So it'd be interesting to see, photography's been going since 2010. So it'd be interesting to see where we're at in video, and what was that, 15 years?
Yeah. And 15. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be,
Yeah. That'd be crazy.
yeah, that is hard to wrap your head around. So, as we're talking about the motivating factors that we have inside our company and kind of what drives us on a daily basis, what advice would you give to whether it's a student, whether it's a career professional, whether it's someone who's looking to make that change, looking back at your last 15 years in business for yourself and looking ahead at the next 15 years? What advice would you give them for those sleepless nights?
It was just something I felt like I had to do,
Right.
but there were, there was a lot of times I would take all my photography gear and throw it in a closet and close the door and say I'll never, do that again. Because it's daunting, where you start, where you end up, where you're going with it all, and you never know because you're writing the book as you're going,
Right.
and where you think you're going to be in 5 years from now is never where you're going to end up. You know, it, I guess the advice I would give is that if you want it bad enough, if you want it something, you got to want it more than anything else. Like people are going to tell you it's not going to work, and they're right if you believe it, but you got to want something so bad that it doesn't matter the sleepless nights, the time away from family, missing out on events, whatever it is, you got to be hungry for it. And there is no secret formula to it. I wish there was, but there's not. It is like hard work. It's you know consistency. I'd tell you the thing I always tell is consistency over time yields results.
Yes. Yep.
Period. I mean, you can be consistently really bad at something and you'll end up really bad at something, or you can be consistently good at something or try to be good at something and work at it and work at it and work at it, and it's going to get better, but you got to put the time in. And you know I'm by far not the best photographer in High Point or around, but I work at it on a daily basis, and I work at building relationships on a daily basis and work at, trying to make sure I'm where I need to be for business and home. And I come up short every day, but I get up every day and I try again.
Right.
And you're going to have so many days that you don't want to do it. And those are the days you got to work at it harder,
Absolutely.
because the good days are wonderful, but they're far and few between. There's
Yeah.
going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot more bad days. There's going to be a lot of days that you're trying to figure out how you're going to make your bills or how you're going to get your guys paid and what you're going to do to make this work versus that. But if you believe in it and you continue to plug away at it, it'll work itself out. But you know, the only advice I could really give is just be consistent over time and believe in what you're doing. We had the interns like you said, and I spoke with one of them at their portfolio day, and and she was asking me too. She was like, "So what do you think?" And I was like, "I think you got to." I mean, she had amazing work, beautiful stuff, and I mean, I don't think there's anything she can't create as far as artwork and stuff. And she was like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "I think, there's nothing that's holding you back except for you." I said, "You got to be consistent. You got to believe in it, and you got to want it more than anything else in this world. If you want to be successful, you can work for somebody else probably and be really good at it. You could, you can do your own thing and work really hard and do this. I mean, it's what you want out of it,
Absolutely.
and um,
Well, I like that you said, that there is no magic formula, that there is not a roadmap to the kind of success that a creative is actually looking for.
right. Well, and the thing is, truly, like I know a lot of great photographers. I mean, I know a lot of great retouchers. And again, I'm not the best out there, but you'll play hell trying to outwork me. You know, in the end of the day, I will put in the time. And that's what makes the difference, and again, I've realized a lot this spring, and I realized I need to take a step back, slow down to go faster, and that's where we're at now as a company. And I think this is going to make us stronger overall. And I think it's going to bring a lot of new dynamics in that we haven't seen yet. And I'm excited about it. I mean, I get to places in my head. I mean, you guys see it to where, you wonder what in the hell you're doing on a daily basis. How do I make this work again today? And why am I here? And, I could do X, Y, Z and it'd probably be better, but then when you have that moment of clarity and you can step back and you're like, no, this is why I'm here. We're building something. We've come so far, from nothing. I mean, we started this from nothing. There was nothing. I had a camera and 3 lights. That's what I started with. And, you know, so when you go from nothing to this, it is because you want it. You want it bad. And it's working every day, and then getting good people to back you and to walk next to you in this journey. That's what makes the difference. And believing in what they can do and believing what you can do, and everybody pulling together.
Yeah.
But if you're not pulling together, it's always going to be a struggle.
That's
And
right.
that's where it gets hard, and you have to make adjustments, and that's what we're doing, I guess.
I
Is
think I think that is such a concise. I like that, and I think that the people that need to hear that are going to really resonate with what you just said. That there is no magic formula. It's perseverance. It is perseverance to your own inner voice, to the voices around you, saying it's easier to go a different route. It's easier to, So if the folks that are listening, dust the camera off, bring it out of the closet, sharpen the pencils, turn on your desk light, strap in, and create something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and stick with it, and it'll pay off.
I like that. Well, Johnny, thank you so much for joining us. And again, I'd kind of like to do this as we begin every season, to sort of have a temperature check, sort of have what we've done, where we've been, where we're going, what we're excited about in the future.
Yeah.
And I think that this kind of marks the second season, so to speak, of the Word of Mouth podcast. Again, I would encourage anyone who wants to listen to any of the other episodes we have. We've got a few up by now. You can find them on Spotify. You can find them on Apple Podcasts. You can find them on Podbean or YouTube. If you just look up Johnny Davis Digital Solutions or Johnny Davis Productions, you should be able to find everything that we have on the web.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.